figure out the entire thing. I'm going to spoon feed you all this information in the stage directions. But he says the best plays have nothing more than dialogue. And that's the truth, because then we get to live in different circumstances. We're given the opportunity to create and manipulate and be innovative in our surroundings and not just imitative. Because if there's a library or encyclopedia that you're reading every time you go to read a stage directions, you fall short and you fall flat on your face, because now you just are focused on structuring how it was written, and there's nothing more you could do. And then it goes on to talk about how the actor can play specific things. Now, in the stage direction, it says the character's romantic, or he's evil, or whatever it may be, and that is just a preconceived notion. And the actor has two options at that point in time, and he can do one of two things. He can make up something where he thinks that this is what love is, or this is what I believe love to be, or he could use his own life experience to do it, in terms of saying, well, this is the love that I've faced in my life, so I'm going to manipulate what that means to me and then play that. But more often than not, he misses the mark. And what he goes on to say is that if he plays what he thinks is the text, it will be imitative and conventional. If he uses his own experience, it may not marry with the text. And when he says marry with the text, it may not be the same kind of love. It may not be the same kind of hate. And then we as an audience become confused, and we become trapped in the person playing a lover or a villain or something like that. And then it becomes deadly because we no longer think for ourselves. We no longer get to choose for ourselves. We no longer get to go, yes, that person has done evil things or awful things, but he's still human, and there's still a specific flavor to him, and not just a villain. And I hope that makes sense. I know I kind of have scatterbrain with a lot of things I'm kind of talking about, but this is going over the entire 60-page chapter that is the Deadly Theater, and there's so much information. I found this really cool when he talks about, in a living theater, we would each day approach the rehearsal putting yesterday's discoveries to the test, ready to believe that the true play has escaped us. But the Deadly Theater approaches the classics from the viewpoint that somewhere someone has defined the play. And I really like that, and going back to the idea that somewhere someone has defined the perfect way to do the play is just absurd. But then he goes on to say what lively theater could be, and that's learning the inventions that we came up with last time we had rehearsal, and coming into rehearsal with a brand new perspective with everything that we've learned from yesterday, and not be trapped into one way of playing the thing. And I think that's the pitfall of theater today, is that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rehearsals in, we think we've found it, and we think we've structured everything. We think we've come to a point where the audience will be nice and comfortable with the information that we're trying to give them, without experimenting with different ideas, experimenting with the possibilities of, he's not just romantic, he's a romantic because he's slightly a sociopath or a psychopath, in terms of he needs somebody to love him for the sake of being a part of what society tells him that he needs to be, versus just being in love. But he's a very good lover, and he's very good at pretending to be in love, and all these other things. And that's a poor example, and it's kind of more of a ramble. But I would be more interested to see the theater coming more alive with a different rehearsal process being brought into the actual performances, which he later goes on to talk about the Pekin opera, and how nothing was reborn, and the difference between life and death was unmistakable. And the Pekin opera is obviously just brilliant in terms of how it's been around for so long and it's been innovative for so long in terms of you can go see the same show 5 nights a week and it'll be different every single time. There'll be different flavors, there'll be different distinguishes, there'll be different beliefs as there was the night before, because people are constantly changing, people are constantly learning, are constantly adapting, and that's what the theater is about. And it's learning to adapt and be part of something that you may or may not actually belong to. And then to continue on with the Pekin idea, he talks about every form is mortal, every form must be reconceived, and its new conception will bear the marks of all the influences that surrounded it. The theater is relativity, and I love that idea that he talks about relativity in the theater, that this is what it once was and now this is what it is, and that it could be reborn with the ideas of the past and the ideas of the present and the hopes of the future, and all that could be reborn into something else. It's the idea of the phoenix. We want to be the phoenix. The theater should strive to be the phoenix, where it's this majestic bird and it creates magnificent things, and it's something of mystical origin, something that we want to believe in, and then when we see it, it's just awe-inspiring, and we go, wow, that's something truly different. And when the phoenix peaks and it finds something new, and it not finds something new, but it peaks into something of its greatest form, it dies only to be reborn in the ashes of itself. And I think that's what lively theater should really be, or live theater should be, is that it's constantly be changing, constantly renovating itself, constantly being influenced by the past as well as the present. Which is really, really cool. And then he goes on to make a joke, and then he says, deliver the goods or be fired. And in terms of fired, I like taking my analogy of the phoenix and saying, deliver the goods, be the greatest you can be, or be fired. Not just fired in the modern text of go away, be done, but be fired, be flamed and die and burn and be created into ash, and then be reborn into something that you should be, or something that could be greater. Then he kind of changes gear, which I found really interesting, and he kind of talks about the American theater and how we don't know what style is. And he kind of attacks the American theater for a while, where he goes on to describe that all we do is try to emulate European style. When we talk about that play had real style, or it had that actor had real style, real caricature, and he kept making the jokes. I kind of agree, and it's kind of sad, but that we just say these words because we want to imitate European theater. And he gave a wonderful analogy about how he saw King Lear perform for a bunch of Russians, and who didn't really speak any English, and they became captivated with so many of the subtleties and the beauty in a lot of the pieces, and they didn't really even understand the language. But when it was brought to America, where they clearly understood the language, a lot of the subtleties and a lot of the delicate wordplay was lost to them, because they were so focused and driven for epic scenes. So I found that really interesting, that he talks about style, and that Americans don't really know what style is. And I would love to challenge that, but at the same time, I kind of have to agree with him, which is quite unfortunate at times. And then finally he talks about the spectator, and that the spectator has nothing to do, but has everything to do with the theater. And that kind of goes back to that idea about the Russians versus the Americans seeing a play. And that's not to say the Russians are better than us at watching plays, but the idea that we are so much more focused on epic scenes or stylistic scenes where we can beat our heart at and go, oh, that's what that means. That's what I felt that in my bones. When a lot of times the more subtle and intricate moments are really where those epic scenes lie, and where the heart of those pieces lie. And then he goes to talk about that the underlying everything in the play that could miss the spectator whip past them. Sorry, I was actually just reiterating. I'm going through my notes and I was just reiterating. I was going ahead of myself. But a slide towards the deadly theater, the liveliness of the actors waned as the mediatory of the relation with their public and their themed lessened. So when they go to talk to the public, it all kind of just fell short. So that's kind of my topic of deadly theater and what I wanted to kind of talk about with all that. And I think I got everything. And I know it was kind of tangenty and there's a lot going on. And I don't know. There is kind of a whole bunch of information. But I the reason why I did want to talk about the deadly theater because it's something that strikes me as very true today. And I love the idea that this book was written over 45 years ago and that it is much more apparent today. And I just love to see really great theater. And it breaks my heart how more often than not the deadly theater is much more alive and well than a live theater. So that's my presentation. Thank you. Bye.